The girl cried as the old man caught her, but what the cops did was amazing. Sometimes life can be unexpected. Sometimes things surprise you and all you can do is roll with the punches or let them beat you to a bloody pulp. Sometimes it means missing out on something we really wanted to do, and it means missing out on getting together with people you had really looked forward to seeing. All of these things can feel frustrating and disappointing for certain 7-year-old. Rosa Paul was surrounded by luxury and wealth. From an early age, her parents were influential businessmen and did everything possible to ensure their beloved daughter had everything she needed. Few of Rosa's peers could boast of having a personal driver or a nanny that took care of them while their parents were at work. However, despite it, all Mr. and Mrs. Paul tried to raise their daughter the right way and tried not to indulge her in every whim. The parents wanted Rosa to grow up understanding that she needed to work for everything in her life and not just count on the help of her parents. Therefore, the Paul couple planned a great future for Rosa, providing her with everything she needed to achieve success. They set up a bank account with a tidy sum for her. It was meant to pay for their daughter's education at a prestigious university. Rosa's life seemed very calm and predictable at the time. That was probably because the girl didn't think her life could be any different. As if to confirm the suspicion, something happened soon, which completely changed her attitude about life. It was a regular day when everything went as usual, and there was no indication of upcoming trouble. That morning, family driver Sam took Mr. and Mrs. Paul to their office and then returned for Rosa to take the girl to school. After that, the driver did some of the errands assigned by the head of the family, took the car for an oil change, and then picked up Rosa from school, then barely having enough time for a cup of coffee. Sam went to get Mr. and Mrs. Paul as they were done with work, but these were far from all the assignments. For the day, the driver was also supposed to take Rosa to all of her after-school activities, such as the second language, dance, and music class. Of course, the after-school activities took up a lot of Rosa's time. She often returned home after dark, and that evening, before taking Rosa to her classes, Sam had to take Mrs. Paul to the airport. This was an unplanned trip. It turned out that Mr. Paul needed to fly to the end of the country to urgently deal with some issues at one of the company branches. Therefore, when Sam finally got back and put Rosa in the back seat of the car to take her to classes, he was literally about to collapse from fatigue. The situation was further aggravated by the fact that the unplanned trip to the airport threw off the schedule, and now Sam had to hurry. Unfortunately, as the car was entering a sharp turn, Sam didn't slow down in time and the car skidded to the side of the road. Since the speed was high, the man couldn't bring the car to a stop fast enough, and so it crashed into a pile of construction waste that remained after the dismantling of an old plant nearby. It was a shapeless pile of broken bricks interspersed with scraps of metal rods. In addition, beams sticking out in different directions. After the crash, the car was immediately filled with the distinct smell of gasoline. The fuel tank was probably damaged in the grass, causing it to leak. Since Sam had stopped at the gas station after his trip to the airport, the tank was full of fuel slowly poured onto the ground, leaking under the body of the mangled car. Situation was clearly dangerous and unpredictable. It's hard to see where the spark came from, but it lit the gasoline that leaked from the punctured tank. Fortunately, there was a bus stop in front of the old plant. Since it was not that late at night, there were people waiting for the bus there. In fact, they became the unwitting witnesses to the drama unfolding before their eyes. Look, the fuel tank is probably broken and there's going to be an explosion. Eyewitnesses shouted, not knowing what to do in this situation. Some of them rushed to help, but the fire around the car caused them to stop in fear of their knees trembling. No, just give up on it. Don't even think about it. The car will explode at any minute, said the most seasoned observers who didn't want to risk their lives, knowing how dangerous the situation was. Meanwhile, there was real hell inside the car. The driver was unconscious and little Rosa was banging her hands on the window. Trying to get out of the passenger door was jammed during the accident, and the girl couldn't get out on her own. People at the bus stop were screaming and crying out in horror, and someone pulling themselves together called 911. Suddenly, a seemingly unremarkable man stepped out from the crowd of the casual spectators, having thrown the hood of an old jacket over his head. He headed towards the burning car. He's crazy. He's gonna die, an agitated woman's voice called after him. But the young man continued to walk confidently as if there was no fear in his soul. The stranger's clothes looked shabby and unkempt, and he looked a bit like a homeless person. But despite his appearance, the man had a brave heart beating in his chest. Having run up to the car engulfed in flames, the stranger grabbed a piece of pipe laying nearby and having ordered the girl to duck, he broke the window in just one blow. Then, without wasting any time, he reached in the car and grabbed the girl and pulled her out of the burning vehicle. At that moment, the man's torn jacket and his long uncombed hair caught fire. But the brave rescuer didn't even seem to notice it running away from the car, all the while covering the girl with his body. 3 seconds later, the fire reached the fuel tank and a powerful explosion ensued. The girl and her savior got thrown aside by the blast wave. At that moment, a man ran up to hug them, the one who had called 911 a minute later. He picked up the girl from the ground. She was cried and hurried to the ambulance that had just arrived. However, the doctor still decided to send the girl to the hospital for observation for a couple days to make sure there weren't any consequences from the shock caused by the accident. While she was getting the initial exam, the girl turned her head in all directions, asking, "Where's the man who saved me? Why can't I see him anywhere?" But no one was really listening to Rosa at the time, since they were all concerned only with the state of her health. The girl kept crying a lot both at the hospital and after being discharged. She felt very sorry for the driver, Sam, who died in the accident and whom she thought of as a close friend, and she also couldn't stop thinking about the person who saved her in that terrible car accident. Who was he? What was his name, even though the girl had asked her parents to find this brave man? Their search was unsuccessful. The mysterious stranger seemed to have fallen off the face of the earth, and there was no one who could provide any information about him. Time went by. This accident changed Rosa's life forever. It stirred up the kindest feelings in her soul, making her want to help other people in need. At the age of 13, the girl joined the ranks of a volunteer organization, and together with like-minded people, began to help homeless and sick people. Rosa really liked what she was doing, which was evident by her happy face and her shining eyes. By the age of 23, the driven young lady was already head of a charitable organization which she founded herself. In addition to her own investments, the organization received many donations from people who weren't indifferent to other people's problems. The organization had its own coffee shop and even its own medical center, where people in trouble could receive qualified assistance. One day, while serving hot food in the dining room, Rosa noticed a hunched, thin man with a huge, ugly burn scar covering half of his face. He stood near the entrance and hesitantly fiddled with a battered baseball cap in his hands, feeling awkward and embarrassed. The young woman came closer to the man and asked, "Excuse me, can I help you with something? Your scar? Does it hurt?" The stranger looked intently at Rosa and then said, "Miss, I'd be very grateful for a plate of hot soup and a couple slices of bread, and the scar doesn't bother me at all. I got it 13 years ago when I saved a little girl from a burning car, trust me. I've already gotten used to the fact that my face is so ugly." Rosa couldn't contain her feelings. Touching the stranger's shoulder, she said in a trembling voice, "It's me, I'm the girl that you saved 13 years ago. I've been looking for you for so long. Why'd you leave the scene so quickly that day?" The man smiled awkwardly in response, wiping away a tear that was running down his face, and then he shared his story. As it turned out, Rosa's rescuer was named Danny John, and he spent most of his life on the street. The man never knew his parents and grew up in an orphanage growing up. Mr. Danny began to trade in petty theft in supermarkets, only ever stealing food from them. Of course, this trait caused the homeless thief with many problems with the law. That's why he was so quick to leave after the accident. He wanted to avoid getting caught by the police. "I don't know how I can thank you, but please let me give you some money. I can give you a lot of money so that you can get yourself a house and you won't have to live outside," offered Rosa. Nevertheless, Mr. Danny just shook his head and said that he was already used to living on the street and he didn't need her money. But having worked at the volunteer organization for so many years, Rosa wasn't going to abandon her plans so easily. Instead of money, the girl offered Ms. Danny a job at her charity organization, which would provide him with shelter and hot food, and he would be paid for his work. Mr. Danny's face brightened, and Rosa realized that she'd hit the bullseye with her proposal. After all, more than anything in the world, the homeless man wanted to have the family that he'd never had, and now helping other poor people like himself. Mr. Danny felt, like all the workers at the volunteer organization, were his huge family that took care of him and loved him very much. You have to take risks.